Welcome to Water Cooler Conversations, a podcast dedicated to one-on-one discussions that delve into the stories and insights of leaders and innovators driving positive change in their communities and beyond. These thoughtful and engaging dialogues explore the work, motivations, and personal journeys of those addressing some of today's most pressing challenges. Join in to discover the people shaping a more sustainable future, one conversation at a time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Water Cooler Conversations, hosted by the Climate and Water Initiative. And for our first guest today, I'm very happy to introduce Neeshad Shafi, who also happens to be the Director of Climate Policy and Partnership at the Climate and Water Initiative. Neeshad is very well known. He's active in multiple areas related to climate policy, climate activism, environmental sustainability. He's a well-experienced speaker. If you're active in any of those areas in the Middle East, and especially in the Gulf area of the Middle East, you're probably familiar with him. You've seen him talk. You've seen his work. You've seen him out and about. He's a man of the people, so to speak. So I'm very, very happy to have him as our guest. There's a lot more in his bio, but I don't want to get into it right away because I want to have a chance for us to talk about it as we're here today. So Neeshad, welcome to our very first episode.
Thank you, Mohammed. It's a pleasure to be here, and also congratulations on the podcast coming out very soon. Thanks for having me on the first episode, and looking forward for this brief chat. Yep.
That's great. That's great. So, I always like to maybe get a little bit personal with my guests in the beginning. And one of the things I like to talk about is how we know each other, and more specifically, how we met. So I'm going to share my perspective, and then I'd like to hear the other side of what that looked like for you. So I know that obviously we started working together, I would say around 3 years ago, maybe a little over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I was at the Middle East Institute, and I was the director of the Climate and Water program there. I was starting off the program. And I was, had my very first research assistant, Abby Krulik. She was great. And we were both sort of developing the program. One of the tasks, of course, is to recruit scholars. This is very early on, right? We would sit down and we chop up names and say, okay, who could be a perspective, people that are active in the Middle East in these topics. And your name was one of the names that popped up, right? I mean, obviously you're all over the internet, as we said. You were on the short list, and I said, okay, well, let's make a point over the next couple of weeks to find a way to contact and invite them. And the funny thing, I don't know if you know this, but the funny thing,
Yep.
literally, you know the story. The week after we had this conversation, the following week, she contacted me. I said, "You will not believe what happened." I said, "What, Abby?" And she goes, "Neeshad Shafi contacted me via, I think it was LinkedIn, and said he's very curious about the program because we did some very initial stuff, early events and things like that, not much." And he said he was curious and inquired to join the program. And it was one of the things that made me realize sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But I want to hear how it looked like from your end.
No, exactly. I remember. So I remember when I dropped email from initially contacting your colleague back then, and I sent an email to you, and like I said, Nishad, you will not believe me. You are on the list to be contacted ASAP. So you reached out, and it was destined to be connected, or destined to be reached out. So I feel it was meant to be, and it was great that I was in the list for to be contacted, and probably I had edge of the information up ahead, and I reached out. So it was great, and I think that was how we connected virtually. And then I think we met first time, was it during the World Cup in Doha, or were we at COP in Sharm el Sheikh? I mean, I literally don't know the first in-person meeting though,
Yeah,
but I literally meant when we reached out, and I saw your email telling like, hey, Nishad, you're always on the list, and glad that you are here with us now. So it was a wonderful experience, and also being part of the program was also quite interesting and a lot of learning experience. And yeah, I got to write a couple of stuff back then. So yeah, it's been a quite an amazing journey so far.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not over yet.
Yeah,
You thought you were
the
done with
fun
me. You may have
is
thought you were done with me when you left when I left
no, no, no,
engineering,
no.
but
I think the fun part is
I
yet
dragged
to
you with me
start.
still. And yeah, it's been great. So obviously, as I mentioned, and you are doing and have done many things. But I also, and obviously, you're now also part of CWI. But maybe just for context, if you can chat a little bit about some of the broader work you're doing at the moment. I know, your background, ironically, is more of an engineering background. You've dealt in the energy side. You're more well known for your climate activism side. I think it shocks a lot of people to know that you have that energy background experience as well, because if I'm, from my perspective, I think your sort of notoriety came from the activism work that you've been doing, especially in Qatar. That's where you used to be for a very long time. But I know there's some evolutions in your career more recently. So just talk to us a little bit about what you're doing these days in terms of how you're currently shifted, and then we'll talk about sort of where you began.
I started with as a water engineer for a couple of years when it was early in my career, and I did my master's in energy and environment engineering. And I'm someone who came to climate advocacy through my engineering background, not knowing what climate change is all about. So I did my master's thesis on climate change studies over Southeast Asia. So many of the people don't really realize how I reached to climate advocacy was long before the new Gen Z climate activism started. So I was someone who learned climate change through the modeling data, which I did with my professor back in those days. So I got curiosity was because I learned the stuff and I understood this is happening. Unlike many of the people are getting into this through sort of activism background they learn from their counterpart or friends. So unlike I came to climate activism through science. So I used to say always I'm a science guy who knows climate change. And then I thought I should be the right advocate for that because I learned those things. So that was a good way of at the very beginning to bring people to the realities of climate change because back then it was not easy like how we see. I mean, I'm talking about 7 years back when I started my activism. So yeah, over the time I got you evolve yourself professionally and also on a personal life. So I moved to climate, to the climate finance, now working on carbon markets on how to look at climate action through generating revenues for climate action in developing nations. So yeah, so I still have my nonprofit arm with Arab Youth Climate Movement Qatar, which I co-founded back in 2019. Still active, still working. So that's like the brief time scale of how it was and what it's been. So at the moment, I'm between Doha and Abu Dhabi, doing stuff on climate finance, which is I'm very keen about. It is quite interesting how the region also working on the same stuff. So it's a very early stages. So I would be again, I would say in this field, I'm also that early mover people working on climate finance or carbon markets.
Yeah, that's a very, thank you for a nice condensed version. I know it's a lot more elaborate than that, but I want to dive into a couple of areas there. I want to talk about, I think probably was a really big deal, I think, which is the youth movement aspect, the in Qatar, that organization that you developed, because I think that was a game changer, right? I mean, Qatar is doing stuff, right, in terms of climate change. They have a ministry in climate change. They're fairly active, but I think to get to that point was probably propelled by some other drivers, right? And I think that kind of organization helped to maybe also add more relevancy and competency, and if I may even say some level of prestige in terms of Qatar being able to operate in the space. So can you talk about maybe sort of how that began specifically? How the organization developed, like the seed of the idea, the conception to execution? Because I think that'd be very interesting for people that are maybe in a similar space, activists or young contributors that want to do something similar. So how did you do that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Like, it wasn't that easy how it looks like these days. A lot of state and non-state support you receive this day because climate change is a household discussion these days. thankful to all contributed, not just our organization. So back in those days, climate change advocacy or climate issues very profoundly was discussed only by the government, especially in the Gulf countries and beyond Gulf in Middle East as such. It was quite a government affairs, unlike a community or civil society were not part of this great discussion at whatever level it's maybe you're bringing academic knowledge, you're bringing community knowledge. They were all not welcomed at some point of time in the past. So there was this space I saw when I started this advocacy group. I just graduated and started living in Doha. There was quite a big gap of people's understanding against what governments are doing proactively. So either their work had not been directly reaching to, or the communication was not there directly connected to community, because most of their work has been with the UN. They go to UN, come back. Nobody sees their work. I mean, obviously they've been doing great work back and today, but the fact is those things were not reaching out to a larger audience. When I say audience, it's a community. So one of the things we wanted to showcase at that point of time was how young people who Qatar has always pushed for a knowledge-based economy moving forward from petrol fossil fuel. So that knowledge economy means the people with the knowledge asset are brought into the table. So the idea was to bring that sort of knowledge-based young people to mainstream, to study climate, to study environment, use them as a knowledge for the kind of driving the country's climate action. So that was a basic idea when we started. But it was quite a great discussion when we had. So I tried to bring a couple of young Qataris back then to build this I would say back it was called the Climate Majlis. We used to meet at a university free space because we were not an organization back then. So the idea was to bring people with that sort of mindset to like, hey, what can I do or to help my country or the region as such in terms of facing climate change. So nobody like, wow, what do I do? Is there any forum or space we can do that? So we said, yeah, there's something called UNFCCC. I've never heard of. So, but I said, hey, there was a UNFCCC hosting a COP 18 in Doha in 2012. Those people with me and those who are now never heard of that conference. Unfortunately, climate conference like the COP, which we have now, back in COP 18, wasn't that famous. Okay, people might remember still the Copenhagen, which was a disaster, etc. But for the region, people completely forgot COP 18, which was in Doha. It's like, hey, that was the regional COP. We're missing a big puzzle there of Qatar. So that was something I also tried to familiarize and bring people who are associated with that. So the problem was a lot of people either left the country or many were doing that as a part of their job. So when the COP was done, halas, job is done. So they did not continue their climate legacy. So that's what I think Egypt or UAE did since COP. They've kept the legacy, what they would do or achieve since COP, and put and in a way I would say like corporate terms KPIs to what to achieve since hosting a COP. So back then it wasn't great, and I think the whole COP has been, changed how they want to be, and it got bigger and smarter, I should say. So that was when I saw there's a big gap of people's understanding against what government doing and what community can contribute in building the awareness side. So I used this as an opportunity, and the journey wasn't easy. There was not many people who were interested in the subject, and there was time when there was not even a single subject in the university to study sustainability or climate in the Gulf countries. Most of the countries didn't have it. Now you will find PhD in sustainability, water. Water has been always there. I mean, water minus climate change, because water was part of your daily life, and if you don't sustain, the region would not sustain. So they were taking the water as like one silo and work on it, how we can bring water, water, water. But water with climate was never talked about. Like, at this pace, the water would be, impacting our sole lifeline. Climate change would devastate, and it will be creating more and more miseries to this region as such. But so they dealt water as a silo, so climate was never associated with them. So in a way, water was discussed, climate as a broad perspective was not even taken care. So what we did was to bring that sort of an advocacy to build a community around this subject, and it took time to establish itself. And I would say it starts slow, like everybody says in the Middle East, things start slow. But when you pick it up, you go on a faster pace than anybody else. So for me, I have some fond memories how it started with a very few members, and how it became now we are a registered association. A claim I would say till date nobody has it. We are the still the first and only registered independent youth-led initiative. Obviously, we invite beyond youth also. So organization in the state of Qatar still working on advocacy, community development around climate and sustainability. So that has been journey, how it was in 2018, 19, and how we are in 2025.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. It's almost I was gonna ask you about your origin story, but sort of that's part of it, right? As you
Yeah.
started in the water engineering space and then you got to a point where you noticed something was missing and you wanted to contribute. I want to talk about one thing that you brought up that I completely agree on, which is this idea of silos. And especially, me, I'm the water guy, as some people call me. But this idea of how climate, right, the climate space and all of its tentacles, right, activism, adaptation, mitigation, et cetera, and water, and how those two things traditionally don't haven't mixed. And to a certain extent, I think it still are somewhat separate because it surprised me because I came from a 100% water background and later in my career I started doing stuff within my water work to incorporate climate, to bring the climate in. But the inverse wasn't always true. And so when I sort of changed my career path and completely jumped into the climate space, well, once I left my water utility job, um, it struck me that how deep the silo is because all of a sudden I became one of those people that were the water people in the climate space. And I had just sort of arrived. Of course, I had the experience, but I was like, wow, it struck me that that shouldn't be the case. There should have already been people that are in the space that are, shakers and movers that are pushing this particular part of the climate agenda on the water space. And I was really surprised, just to reiterate your point, I was really surprised that that wasn't the case. I was happy, of course, because I was able to, add value immediately because there wasn't that many, I feel, people that could do that at that time or had that angle. Um, One other question I had for you is what sort of, I know you've been because of what you said, you've been to a lot of COP meetings, a lot of engagements. And I know of a couple of your stories where you've met some very interesting people. I remember one of the meetings, I don't think this was a COP meeting, I think this was maybe in Qatar. You met John Kerry, right? And I know there was this photo and it was all over social media. We can certainly talk about that, but I'm curious, what are some of the more interesting of course, there's all the technical stuff, very important. But what are some of the more interesting things that you experienced, or people that you've met, or just strange, or even funny things that happened, as you've been traveling this circuit? Because you've been traveling all over the world. I know that visiting different meetings and conferences, working in this type of space. What are some of the more interesting things you've encountered?
I mean, the interesting part also took place like late 2019 before the whole COVID mayhem. So I fondly remember how we as an Arab Youth Climate Movement had started back then with a lot of struggle to establish yourself. The organization really didn't have much funding. Registration is a bit tough to get for a nonprofit organization back then. I mean, still, I would say. So we have this great encounter, which really gave a sort of legitimacy for us. So that's a point which always should discuss. In this part of the world, legitimacy makes everything who you are, your organization, yourself. So if you don't get that from day one, you will always be sidelined, to be frank. So we had that, what do you call, say, that movement. It happened in 2019 when the UN hosted the first UN Youth Climate Summit in New York during UNGA in September. So we got an email from the Office of Her Excellency Ali Al Thani, the Qatar's ambassador to United Nations, inviting our organization to be there. So that was like the moment, I should say, really changed who we were, like a very civil society, never got recognized for the works for last year or so. So even before we went for registration, we were been active as as a club, or like I said, the Majlis Club. So that was there for quite some time before we even went for registration, because we also understood that to be taken seriously, you should be an institution. End of the day, people only take you legit if you are legit. So And once that was done, this was the first event we were going, and so I asked like, who should be representing? They said, bring all your team. So that was surprising to me. So seven of our team traveled to New York to attend the UN Youth Climate Summit representing the state of Qatar. From no one into climate into representing Qatar in the state of Qatar at the UN Youth Summit, first UN Youth Summit. So that was sort of like a proud moment. That's recognition for the organization of our work, and people have been doing that for a year and a half since we were registered ourselves. And also the fun fact is we also got to meet His Highness Sheikh Tamim, the Emir of Qatar, during the same journey organized by the Qatar's embassy there. So that was so we had this interaction. So we said we are here for the UN Youth Climate Summit, and it was like, interesting, because he spoke a day before at the UNGA. So it was a great encounter to share our work. So that also brought us a lot of legitimacy back home. Our pictures were on the media. So this not only brought legitimacy, also like people like, who are these people and why are they there? So that gives us a great mileage also, and obviously mileage and photo ops are super big in this part of the world. I mean, you might have seen how it really helps your way if you're doing the right stuff, not just social media influencing to sell your stuff. So this was fun, and it's got us a lot of mileage for what we've been doing, and we've been since then I should say we have been largely supported by the Ministry of Climate Change. Frankly, back in those days, it was Ministry of Municipality and Environment, which is now divided into two. And now there is a climate change and environment, and climate change, there's another one for municipality. So back in those days, those was like the moments which we really got a recognition, which really helped us to walk the talk. I mean, it was hard sometimes, but that helped us. We got support from the lot of state organizations, took our team to COP. So that was another good ops. They started to recognize young people, and not only government people would be there. There are people who are from the civil society, youth, academics should be part of the delegation. I think we were one of the amongst the first ones to back in those days to be even officially invited to go with the Ministry of Delegation to COPs. And also they invited us to go to the Stockholm event, which was another event which we represented the city of Qatar. So that was a time when youth were never considered, there's like solution makers. The larger contest in the Arab world is like troublemakers. I'm coming from the contest of since the Arab Spring, so that was a contest like, do you believe young people? Oh no! So I think that rhetorics were around the region, not just particular to any single country or single out any country. So that was how youth have been perceived for some time, sitting fresh out of the Arab Spring. So that gives us a lot of legitimacy of our credible work, and also I also made sure that we were not typical Western side activism group. We had a sort of knowledge-based people. I mean, either you are an environmental sustainability student, you're working in environment field, or you are someone who are interested in foreign policy and climate as a part of your, your job or your sort of passion, or you write about this thing. So we made sure that we are a bunch of people who are really into the subject. So we thought that model, I didn't know it would work at that time. That was my idea to, break that, mentality of thinking that, oh, troublemaker young people. So that was the idea, to bring sort of the regional perspective of young people than the westernized activism sort of activist. I envy them, their work perfectly work in their context, not in this part of the world. Here you work with partners, you partner with the government, you partner with the oil and gas industry, you talk to them, get a table where you can share what you think about them, rather than just some slogans and
Yeah.
vandalizing stuff. Maybe in your setup it works absolutely fine, but also I look into this fact. What have you achieved? I mean, today I would say our organization is part of the delegation. We share our thoughts. They consider, not consider, but that's a different thing. But where are you? You're still marching, protesting. You still didn't get the chair on the table which you're asking for the last 4 or 5 years. So I think we moved faster by adopting what fits best for us. We've been criticized for doing that also by the same Western activists. But I said this is the right way to do, and that's why we progressed. Today, youth are official part of most of the government's delegation from GCC and beyond. So this didn't happen overnight. I mean, I will not take claim that we did it, but that was a stepping stone. I mean, how many of you, Mohammed, you know, like in 2019, youth activism in the region on climate, they were for peace, education, etc. But on climate, I would take that we were that sort of an organization who went on to not only become a club, but also an association, which is legit, have a registered office, registered bank, everything. It's a hard thing to gain, and it needs a lot of effort. Because now I still see a lot of young people starting their own organization these days, but all are on their Instagram page, not even a website to back their work. So that sort of activism has lost the charm in the region also because of, again, I would not blame, but very westernized influenced of becoming an activist overnight, become famous on the internet rather than what you do on the ground or your country or region. People forgot that. Now they said Instagram activism is the best to reach the community. Maybe it works in some region. I would not say no, but our region, I doubt still. I mean, social media is just pastime, just one click and their attention. This is just in less than a minute. How are you going to make them feel? I mean, I really doubt, but yes, those things works in some part of the world, and good luck to them. But here, you need to demonstrate on the ground, work with the people, work with the youth communities and students, etc. So I felt that that was something we filled the gap back in like 2019, 2020, 2021, or even during COVID, we did some active online thing. Obviously, during COVID, everybody did online,
Right.
but that caught everybody stuck in online since moving away from. We went back to normal days since the COVID was gone.
Yeah.
So that's like the my take on how I see the regional activism has evolved. Some
Yeah.
are doing great. Some are still stuck in that sort of lingo that no, Western size works with us. Obviously, I am not against taking Western ideas and making it applicable to our region or adopting to our region, which is great. So that's also for me, West and South, collaboration where you collaborate with youth organization there, tell them this works. So can I adopt some ideas, fit into my box, and use it in my region or country. So this I did with a lot of organization. Also had a lot of success doing so.
Yeah. No, you start to answer my main question, but gone to another point, which is actually what the question which I was going to ask, which you sort of really answered, which is idea of the global South and the global North, right? Because your work has been focused on the global South, and those two, to your point, they operate differently, and that maybe in a strange way, the benefit of maybe the global South still sort of developing their identity in the space and how they want to address the issues in the climate, climate change space. They realize to do that, you have to start with partnerships and building institutions, whereas maybe the global North, they have those institutions in place, but they don't have the motivations. And so, the activists or folks, not even just activists, other people operating the space are coming almost from a place of privilege. And because of that, they view it as a zero-sum game. And maybe it is, but you can't go far unless you go together, right? It's that saying. I completely butchered it, but I think you want to go far. You want to go far, you go together. If you want to go fast, you go alone. Something to
You
that
go
effect.
alone. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
yeah,
that's true. I mean,
yeah.
because for long we've been following the North, so that's been how we have seen. In any matter, if it is geopolitics or looking at for climate, we always looked at youth in the North. I mean, for me, it was learning experience. I mean, someone who started attending COP since COP 21 in Paris, I only saw them there, and that was my sort of learning process was how to do what they've been doing. That was my thought process, like everyone who has now. Like you go to a conference in the Europe or US, you're like, I want to do what they've been doing. Yeah, I had the same thing and I failed. I'm not
Mm,
telling I was like, oh, I had this great idea, come and adopt. No, I simply duplicated and I failed miserably. So
mm,
that's why I say people, I went through that failure over years or so. I lost time. So you guys don't have to repeat the same mistake so that you start from day one knowing what fits best in your country, maybe in your village or in your city, and then adopt if it works. If not, don't really do it, or try to build or brainstorm with the young people there or community there to bring the right ideas that can be fit in uh, within that. And I always say within that box. I mean, we are our regions are now all have their own priorities for their respective countries.
Yeah.
So follow what's best in your country. So, like you said, people at some time tend to go together within the global south. Now, even global south is divided. Now
Hmm.
we are also having like now, I need my piece of things. So let's divide among ourselves. That's the division. Our fellow good friends in global north loves it that we are disintegrated. They are more integrated.
Yeah, there's I call it almost, well, two things. One is it's almost a level of elitism, and this is I speak that as someone who lives in the global north, and I see the systems and how it marginalizes a lot of people, a lot of voices that should be on the table. I mean, so, to be maybe this will get me in hot water. Some voices should not be on the table because they're not helpful. But to your point, there are people that are helpful, can add value, but are not able to come on the table because system of elitism and sort of people in power want to remain in power, and people that want to lead want to remain lead, even though, frankly, a lot of times they shouldn't be, and they're the worst people to do it. But I do have a fun term for, the I call it the your point about the social media activists that are, just snapping pictures at conferences, and that's faketivist is the term I came up with. Is
I mean, it's something
the-
fun. I mean, I am not against people showcasing where they are, and as long as that builds some knowledge back home. And it's not just you, end of the term, end of the day, you are here to represent your country or a region. So you come with a lot of commitment going back. So your participation should be really because it's not easy. Because being to those conferences may sound easy to many for global south or even in global north. I mean, always been the easiest thing for south. Now many south privileged ones, including myself, get to go there, but unlike there are people who are doing great work than me still are stuck. They cannot showcase their work. So while you go with a lot of that bag of expectations that you go there and get inspired or get thoughts or bring collaboration or funding or finance for their project. That's what they expect back home. But most of the people are at the moment goes for own benefits, and they're never part of an organization. I always say people, you don't have to start your own. Be part of an organization where you can go back and give it, because not everybody get a chance to go, and that's been that way for long. And for our region, for people to be here today, they took it for people to fight to get those funds and the accreditation and badges to get to here. So now it's also playing the not side of things. Privileged ones get to go. Are they delivering? I am suspicious about some of them. But yes, it's still a tough job for many to go to some of the big events to showcase their work. And I mean, it's good. I want them to be there to showcase their stories. It's better than a very great global north advocates advocating for a person in Bangladesh or in Afghanistan or in some of the underprivileged country. They talk on their behalf because they don't have their story to share, because their country is doing even worse than us, and they are talking on their behalf. Our friends in Bangladesh, Habibi, you talk about what
yeah,
you're doing in your country and stuff. For
yeah,
them, I want them to be there.
yeah,
That's my job also, to make sure those people get a voice there. So that has been done quite long. Now, again, we are also going in that way. Some of the us are like, we people from this region, okay, now we have enough people from the region, and like in 3 years down the line, they was in there. But I feel like people are carried away with this whole idea of like, okay, it's me, I'm going to save the world. Like, again, you told me, like, you go alone, you will not reach the farthest you go. So that's something I would say that what we did was, as an organization, it's not just me. I have a team and board to report and share the things, and we try to bring project ideas or funding opportunities. So when I go to Niven and come back, I have a responsibility to give back to them. So that I try to do justice. That's what I believe personally. But now that sort of thing is losing its essence. Now more people are also very individualistic. They don't have any organization to represent. They use their friends of friends, or like we said, the Basta style of to get there. And who benefits? Nobody benefits. And the point I feel saddened is that at some point they completely leave the space.
yeah,
They are they get a job in some different space or things. This was something they were very urged to do when they were in the final years of a college or a school. And either you go to college, you lose this because you're burdened by studies, or at university, when you leave the university, you are back to the realities of life to find a job or something like that. So for the region like Middle East, it's a reality to many people. They're stuck when they get out of school or university. So then they completely leave the climate track. So I said, what
It's
people
lost.
invested or supported, it's got lost.
Yeah,
So who benefit? If it was part of an organization, your knowledge would have been used by others. They knew how to get these things done, how to attend conference, how to look for funds, etc. Has been, that I said you pass those knowledge to them. Now it's all lost. So that's happening quite a lot. I've been seeing people from my generation, if I call, are all not in this space anymore. I mean, a few of them I know are still in this space, dedicated beyond their regular day-to-day life. So I think they are the committed ones. Nowadays, people lose interest like the moment they don't get a chance to go to an event. That's like, okay, halas, I'm not doing climate change anymore. So that's sort of climate activism has reached our region, unfortunately.
that's too bad. That's too bad. Yeah, it's certainly an access issue. And sometimes even with the best intentions,
Yeah.
I remember, was it the last COP in Azerbaijan, right?
Yeah.
They gave more, for example, badges to the Global South, which I think came from a good place of intention, but
Yeah.
the issue is a lot of those organizations didn't have the funding. So even if you have access, uh, at least to enter the door, people don't have the funding or access to get to the door, and that's
Yeah.
still a prevalent problem for the Global South.
No, the gesture was great to provide badges to Global South, but what's the point when they don't have the capacity to use those badges? What happens end of the day, some of the cases, without naming, they started selling their badges. So there is no option because what do they do with the badges end of the day? Even with the badges, if they need one, they got five. And the one that person even cannot go with that one badge because he don't have enough funds to do so. So they're bound to do it, and I wouldn't blame them. The gesture of how UNFCCC work was great, but man, just giving a badge, it does not give you access to a COP, which, for example, now would be the most difficult one going to Brazil for the Global South.
Mhm.
So this is how. So you need to make sure there is a balance of badges and access to funds.
Mhm.
That would be the right way. I know they don't have full control over this, but they need to allocate sort of things, making sure that equal representation of young people from the global south comes in, and find some budgets they can get through some some sponsorship or etc. Could be formalized then, just like, hey, we are given badges for global south. So what's the point? I mean, it really did not serve the purpose, but the gesture was commendable for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. I think this is a great conversation on that. I want to shift to you. I want to talk a little bit more about you. I mean, we have, but more, maybe get a little bit more personal. And I want to talk about your motivations, right? Your influence, right? We've talked about sort of a slice of the work that you do have done. But I mean, what gets you up in the morning? Why stay invested in the space? Because you are. I mean, yes, you've worn many hats. We've talked about, the water, the energy, the activism, etc. Still centered in the global south, still centered in the Middle East, in the Gulf. But what motivates you? What is the thing that drives you to stay here in this space and continue to try to add value?
Well, I mean, it's easy to, I can be straightforward that things have not done yet. The things I've been working over the years has not reached, I should say, 70%. We are around 50%. This is 5 years of work. And like I said, many of the intentions of people are very suspicious. Why are they here? Are they really working for the community or the region? These are some. I mean, I'm not. I'm completely tarnishing the images, but just trying to say some of the motivations I feel are because I think have enough energy to give because there are still need of me and my work or our organization. So for me as Nishad, I think I have more knowledge I've gained. I want to pass it on to some people before even I vacate this space. Or I mean, I can be like now what I do is more like mentorship, mentor, or write stuff about what I've been working on or I worked on, so that people can get to read and understand. Okay, they're running faster enough, then they can really deliver something. Or this may not work because I just read about his work because he also used to be working in this country or been worked in the past. So for me, my motivation always is that it's still not done 100% because there are gaps and a space like youth, civil society, with a person with an engineering background is not easy to find. You also always end up in a corporate job, and you are obviously corporate job sucks half of your life from your day-to-day thing. So if you want to keep doing that, so there are not many people who do. And advocacy and activism still it's not a full-time job. So people cannot end up there and full-time supporting the community, work on climate. No, it doesn't work. So I thought this model works where you work on a climate in a different space, no problem, but you keep your activism arm working. So in this part of the world, this is the best model that has been working. I mean, rather than in the Western, they can get full time because you are fully funded. You get a lot of funding opportunities also. Not now, I believe, but in the past. But unlike here, it's been pretty tough if non-state actors are not really supported beyond philanthropy. So philanthropy is also limited in support. So I think this is the best model that fits, especially in the Gulf and far beyond Gulf. Also, it would work better. So I believe that's motivation that I still got space and time to deliver. There's still need of me. It's not that I want to stick around just to help everyone in the name of advocacy, support, or building knowledge. No, the idea is there is a gap still and that has to be filled. The void is still there. The void which I was looking in 2017, 28, that was 100%. Well, I know I should say it's like almost 50 plus is done. So there is another 40 plus to be covered.
Yeah. All right.
So that motivates me every morning that I have to deliver. I have to deliver. So it's that's the energy I have. So I try to do it in whatever way with a couple of hats around, juggle around it. Okay, I need to be here to be using this hat. So I need to be here with this hat. So I try to stick into the space and I made always sure that I should not end up like my predecessor, that when I had a full-time job or stuff, I left the space. I never wanted to leave the space. So I criticize them. So I should be a role model for others that I stick there over this year, over 7 years in activism, had own life, worked in different sectors on a personal level or professional level, but still advocacy, climate. I combine sometimes. I go to an event for job and also advocacy, which I think is the
Efficient.
best works. Yeah, efficient way to work at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So your motivation is, if I could maybe sum it in a way, is pressure and stress, which is for a lot of people.
Well, that would be more stressful to hear, but I would say again that pressure of delivering, there is still space to deliver. So I think as long as there is a space, I'm ready to take that pressure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. As we're winding down, I got two more. I'm gonna push a little bit to get a little bit more personal with you. So, I mean, I know, but for our audience, who we've talked about your motivation, but who's been a big influence for you, right? Who is a person that, when you're having you sort of you know your task, you know your mission, there not every day is a good day, right? Some days are slow, some days are tough. So you draw on your motivation, but who's sort of been a good influence to either put you in this path or to keep you motivated, right? Besides stress and pressure, who's someone that you sort of either look up to or someone who's sort of influenced you the most in doing this kind of work and actually to keep you doing it?
I mean, back in days, obviously there was a lot of motivation for me to start this because starting was the biggest issue. And then obviously I find guidance in meeting more people and great mentors around. But I think the instrumental was the very beginning. I still remember in 2019 when we hosted the launch of Arab Youth Climate Movement in Qatar. um, I was with this guy who was actually part of COP 18. So I can name him without naming him. So he
Mhm.
was the guy who marched in Corniche in Qatar for the civil society, calling Arabs to lead now. That was a very famous poster you can see on Guardian or Washington Post still during the COP. That was the largest civil society march back then. I mean, I think since then nobody did a march for climate in any of the Gulf countries, to be frank, even it is staged or not staged. I love that stage sort of stuff. So it was had a big banner, Arabs to lead now, and there was one Mr. Khalid was leading thing. So he was my guest to the launch of this organization, and he motivated me by saying once Nishad, this is not an easy space to do. I was there, but no more. But when for you, my guidance is simple: stay focused. Uh, the saving the environment and nature is part of every religion, and for Islam, the foremost thing to conserve your nature and environment.
Wow.
And these are the words of Prophet Muhammad. And if someone asks you, why are you doing this for? It's for your for religion, and this is my teachings of my religion. So you stick there. That's the path you will take. I mean, may sound very easy back then. I was like, oh, nice words, but still resonate. Somebody, I mean, back then nobody talks about it. Again. I envy his words. Like people started talking 2 years back about religion and climate. You
Mm.
know, with the previous Pope who brought about the Christian version of supporting climate action, then the Islamic world also came in. I'm talking about 2019 when the guy told me about this. So we are also now part of the faith and climate movement within the unit, but I'm talking about somebody who gave me that sort of an virtue to stick on to this. Because back again, I'm going back to the words that those days activism word was pretty critical to be used in any contest, matter, climate, peace, or any sort of backdrop. It was a very, I mean, dangerous term to be frank. Now again, it's a household name to be an activist anymore in this part of the world. So that was a great motivation. And then I would say some of the motivation was like the then Minister of Environment of Qatar was someone who motivated us to register as an association. He said, your legitimacy is how you run an organization with legit credentials. That means it has to be an organization, which is so he was instrumental in making sure that we registered the organization.
Mm.
And that was a bad decision, to be frank, to start with, but it ended up as the best because till now there's no organization who has same credentials as us. Then the previous minister who stepped down just after COP28 in Dubai was also very instrumental, who super supported the idea of why young people and community should be listened. And he supported us many times to be part of the delegation and made sure that he meet us before he leaves the COP space. You know how busy they are. They
Yeah.
take time to meet your young, not only us, the other youth who've been invited from the state of Qatar to meet them. So there's sort of that people at the very national level who supported me and the organization who always kept me to go on. I mean, there's nothing stopping now. You have support. What's stopping you now? And then a lot of international people like Mohammed, who has been quite instrumental in supporting the Mohammed who I'm
Me?
talking to. Yeah.
There's a lot of Mohammeds. You could keep pointing to anyone.
So it's Mohammed Mahmoud, if I want to
Yeah.
clarify,
Thank you.
was also instrumental supporting. I mean, support is not that you have to meet and meet and provide you like sort of motivation. I mean, like the minister, he does not meet often to give me motivation. Those are the term, those are how you make you feel, and some of the words or sort of inspirations they give you still records. The guy Khalid, I haven't met since I met him on that day at the opening of Arab Youth Climate in 2019. So Khalid's words were instrumental till today. So that's how things have been with me. I have a lot of people who might have come and gone, but they truly inspire with their work or actions. And some people are like, I am always motivated by anyone who showcase through their actions
Mm.
than just great speeches. I mean, I have seen enough speeches now. I mean, since I've been in this space for long enough, speeches have been heard. I'm not against speeches again, but I've been always inspired by people who has done something and then he preached me. I love that. I would love to listen to that sort of people who had gone through the difficult phase to run a program, run an initiative, no matter even it's climate on climate, non-climate related. But the people who live through is my greatest inspiration. I talk to them, I gain sort of insight from what they did or from any part of the world, no matter. So either I try to replicate, bring those ideas back home. So that's been my whole inspiration. So against there are a lot of young people who are now sort of activism. Some are great. They might have done great work. I find sort of inspiration from them too, nevertheless. But yeah,
Right.
super a lot of people. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I named someone who richly were instrumental in that very upbringing of me to what I am today, against many others who contributed over the journey.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I think it takes a village.
including Mohammed.
You don't have to butter up to me, but I'll take the praise.
I mean,
Um,
I'm not going to gain anything. So, but yeah.
but you touch on a point, I think, an really not respected enough quality of leadership is integrity, right? I mean, everybody wants to lead, but don't understand the responsibility or the burden, right? And people that inspire tend to be people that have integrity, and a lot of times maybe their intention is not to inspire, but that's more organic and genuine. That what they're doing it for the right reasons, right? You said they want to do it for the greater good or for the public good or to help others, and those people are truly inspirational because they're doing it selflessly. I want to end, I could talk to you all day, as you know, but I want to end with a fun question. And obviously, you've acquired a lot of skills and skill sets in your career and personality and all these things. What would Nishad Shafi be doing if he was not in this space? What would you be doing that transfers your skills, the skills you have of sort of, community, bringing people together, you're a quick thinker, you're pretty adaptable. If you are not doing all of this work, it's usually other people, it's easier. I say if you're not doing this one thing, but you've done many things. So all of those many things, put them to the side. What would you be doing
Wow.
if you're not in this space?
Wow, that's I really don't have an answer because I probably this is what defines me. I mean, if I would have not been doing something public good, I don't know. I would love to be maybe lecturing some students at the university.
Mm,
That way I'm still engaged or
yeah,
motivate some people.
yeah,
That would be something I would have been seeing myself. I've not been not doing this.
yeah,
I would have been doing that as a like a job where I get to talk to people and inspire them, or maybe just another associate assistant professor in a university talking to
okay,
a lot of young minds. So, but yeah, given that I've did my energy and environment, so I would be in an environment department at the end of the day. So obviously, I would have been used that as a space to inspire more people, at least through not lived experience, but also through my professional academic career, helping them to come through or take up this line of academics that can help them end up a green jobs. So
yeah, yeah.
that would have been the best otherwise.
Nishad, as always, I would love chatting with you, and it's good to share some of the things you've done and been doing. But not a question, but more of a plug for you. What do you want to share with our audience in terms of what you're doing these days? Is there an event you're being a part of? Is there publication coming out? Is there something that you're involved in you could share with our audience so that they're well aware of?
Absolutely. So we are hosting an event on June 1st. It's on climate diplomacy with the German embassy in Doha. It's a high-level sessions around diplomacy and climate action with former ministers and current ministers on climate and foreign ministries, and also youth sessions on youth role in diplomacy and climate. That's an upcoming an event in Doha. What else is coming up? Working on a survey-based analysis of youth and mental health and how that can also juggle around the policy around the mental health within the state of Qatar. We're trying to do as for Qatar for the survey starting very soon, but largely looking at a regional one. From a point where we really reach out to young activists and advocates who are in the space. Many people have been hurt, been having burnouts because of the pressure, mere pressure of not just climate change, but also staying in this space. So we wanted to do the both side and a flip side of not just, oh, is really climate change is a part of your burnout, or to stick in this space also is a burnout for many of the people. So not the traditional questions to be asked because that sort of surveys are already out there. So we just want to have the flip side to look at the pressure of being or delivering climate sort of thing. Our young people put under pressure where they have nothing to do. I mean, are they burdened enough to deliver to the community when they are really not really the cost of anything what we are facing now? So yeah, that's a work. Writing still something around the Trump impacts on climate change. Still haven't completed it, and something probably this I've not done any podcast. I'm also working on my book
Oh,
and looking for a great publisher to publish. If some publisher sees the video, probably heck can reach out to me
sure.
anytime.
Sure,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Yeah. What's your book about?
The book is something around what we actually spoke about today. So it's how to sort of we touched around most of the things. It's like an advocacy book for the people for the MENA region. So some of the things we shared today are part of that, my personal experience and the experience of a couple of other experts or youth advocate I met at that point of time would be interviewed in this. So it's not an autobiography, but it's like a handbook for people to really make a difference in their own country from the regional perspective. It may not be very tempting for the global north.
That's great. That's great. Well, I hope that is eventually successful. I know books take a very long time to write,
Ah,
to publish.
yeah.
It's a true commitment.
It's a true commitment, yeah. Now this is the new hat I'm wearing now.
Yeah, yeah. You're if this was very literal, you'd have a very big hat closet. I can
Yeah. Only that you cannot see when I change
Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I'm lucky I can see your head apparently now. You're not wearing a literal hat. Nishad,
No,
thanks
no.
as always. I'm really happy that you're still engaged. And again, thanks for sharing all of that and being our first guest on our podcast and Water Cooler Conversations. Nishad, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again so much, and best of luck with all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Mohammed. Great and pleasure having you here.